Welcome to our deep dive into demonology. We've got excerpts from the Encyclopedia of Demons and Demonology ready to go. It's amazing how much our ideas about demons have changed over time. You think evil spirits would be a simple concept, but it turns out there's way more to it than meets the eye.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a fascinating journey through history, belief systems, and the human struggle to understand the darker aspects of existence. What really strikes me is how the very definition of a demon has shifted over the centuries.
Okay, so walk me through this. Where do we even begin with understanding demons? What were people thinking way back when?
Well, in ancient pagan traditions, demons weren't always these malevolent entities we might picture today. Think of them more as personified forces of nature, capable of both good and bad, tricksters even. They were part of the natural order, not necessarily evil in the way we might understand it.
So like a powerful storm. Could be destructive, but also brings necessary rain.
That's a great analogy. But around the 15th century, things took a darker turn. With the rise of the Inquisition and the witch hunts that followed, the concept of the demon became deeply intertwined with the Christian idea of fallen angels and servants of the devil.
That's when things get really intense. It's almost as if the fear of demons became a tool, leading to accusations and persecutions based on very little evidence. A bit of a cautionary tale about how beliefs can be twisted, isn't it?
It certainly is. It's crucial to understand this historical context as we delve deeper. Now, speaking of origins, let's talk about where evil itself comes from. One particularly compelling story is that of Ahriman from Zoroastrianism.
Ahriman. Now that's a name I haven't heard before. What's his deal?
Ahriman is this powerful, malevolent force locked in an internal struggle against the forces of good. What's really intriguing is that he's described as being born from a moment of doubt in the creator deity's mind. Doubt creating evil, that's a powerful concept, isn't it?
It makes you wonder about the nature of doubt and how it plays into our understanding of good and evil. Is it an inherent part of creation or something separate? How does the idea of Ahriman compare to the Christian figure of Lucifer, the fallen angel? They both represent evil, but are they the same?
You've hit on a key distinction. Lucifer was initially an angel who rebelled against God, whereas Ahriman seems more like an independent force of evil from the very beginning. Their origin stories reflect very different views on the nature of evil itself. Is evil a corruption of good, or is it an eternally opposing force? These are questions that have fascinated theologians and philosophers for centuries.
Big questions indeed. And then there's the Antichrist, another major player in Christian demonology. From what I've read, the concept has gone through some changes over time.
It certainly has. Initially, the Antichrist was a more abstract representation of evil, but over the centuries, it evolved into the idea of a specific individual who will embody ultimate evil at the end of the world.
So we've gone from a general concept to a very specific and possibly very terrifying individual. It speaks to our fascination with the idea of ultimate evil, doesn't it? This idea that there's some ultimate showdown between good and evil waiting for us.
Absolutely. It's a theme that has resonated throughout history and continues to capture our imaginations today. But let's move from these grand, overarching figures to the more specific demons themselves. The Encyclopedia mentions the 72 spirits of Solomon, a fascinating concept.
72 Spirits of Solomon. Sounds like an exclusive group. Tell me more about these guys.
These 72 spirits were believed to be bound by King Solomon and forced to serve him. Each of them possesses unique powers and characteristics. Instead of trying to cover all of them, let's focus on a few particularly interesting ones, starting with Asmodeus, the king of demons himself.
Asmodeus. Now, he's a demon with a story. I've heard he's connected to lust and temptation. But what else makes him so fascinating?
Well, the Encyclopedia provides some intriguing details. It mentions how he was bound by Solomon and has a peculiar fear of water.
A fear of water. That's interesting. Is there any significance to that detail? It seems almost out of place for a being of such power.
It could symbolize a vulnerability to purity or cleansing rituals, things often associated with water. You see, even the most powerful demons, according to these traditions, might have unexpected weaknesses. Asmodeus is a complex figure, terrifying and intriguing in equal measure. Now, if you're ready for another fascinating character, let's talk about Beelzebub, often considered the prince of demons.
Beelzebub. He's always struck me as particularly creepy. What is it about him that makes him so unsettling?
He's often associated with witchcraft, rebellion against divine authority, and even more disturbingly, with flies.
Flies, yuck. That's a pretty potent image, even without all the demonic associations. What's the significance of that connection, do you think?
It likely symbolizes decay, filth, the spread of disease, all things considered antithetical to holiness and purity. These associations contribute to Beelzebub's image as a powerful and repulsive figure, embodying everything that's considered unholy.
So we've got the king of demons, the prince of demons. Feels like we're building a demonic royal court here. And no royal court is complete without a queen, right?
Yeah.
Enter Lilith, arguably the most infamous female figure in demonology.
Ah, Lilith. She's got a long and complicated history. According to some traditions, she was actually Adam's first wife, but she refused to submit to his authority and was ultimately cast out.
That's a pretty rebellious origin story.
Mm.
And I've heard she's also connected to some pretty dark deeds. What else does the Encyclopedia tell us about Lilith?
It mentions how she's often portrayed as preying on children, which has led to the creation of protective amulets specifically designed to ward off her influence. Lilith's story is a fascinating exploration of female power, societal anxieties, and the blurring lines between good and evil.
It makes you wonder about the human need to categorize and understand evil, even creating these hierarchies within the demonic realm. We give them names, forms, rankings, like we're trying to make sense of something ultimately unknowable.
That's a brilliant observation. By giving these entities specific attributes and placing them within a hierarchy, we attempt to impose order on chaos, to make the unknown less threatening. It's a natural human impulse to try and understand the forces that shape our world, even those we perceive as negative or dangerous.
It's fascinating how these ancient cultures tried to make sense of these powerful, sometimes terrifying forces.
Yeah.
But, if you believe in these beings, the next logical question is, how do I protect myself?
Precisely. And it's here that we see human ingenuity and creativity at work. The encyclopedia details a wide range of defense mechanisms, both physical and spiritual, that people have used throughout history to ward off demonic influence. Some of them might surprise you.
Like what? Give me the inside scoop on how people tackled this problem.
Well, consider amulets and talismans, for example. You're probably familiar with mezuzah, those small cases containing Hebrew scriptures that are placed on doorposts in Jewish homes.
Oh yeah, I've seen those. I always thought they were just decorative. But there's a deeper meaning behind them, isn't there?
Exactly. They're meant to ward off evil and are still used today, a testament to the enduring power of these ancient traditions. Then there are tefillin, those leather boxes containing parchment with biblical verses that are worn during prayer. They serve as a physical reminder of God's presence and protection.
It's amazing how these everyday objects can hold such profound spiritual significance. But what about more active forms of defense? I've heard about things like bell ringing and, of course, exorcism. How do those fit into the picture?
Those are classic examples of spiritual practices intended to repel demonic influence. Bell ringing, for instance, was believed to disrupt the negative energy that attracts demons. Exorcism, on the other hand, is a more direct approach, a ritualistic attempt to expel a demon from a person or place.
Exorcism has always held a certain mystique. Is it really as intense and dramatic as it's often portrayed in movies?
While Hollywood might take some liberties, the encyclopedia describes it as a serious ritual involving prayers, commands, and sometimes even physical restraint. The source even mentions Father Gabriel Amorth, a prominent modern exorcist, who claimed to have performed thousands of exorcisms throughout his career.
Thousands. That's incredible. He must have encountered some truly harrowing cases. Did he have any insights into what might make someone more vulnerable to demonic influence?
He believed that certain modern practices, like using Ouija boards or engaging with satanic content, could open the door to possession, making individuals more susceptible to demonic influence. Of course, these are beliefs, and it's important to approach them with a critical and discerning mind.
That's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the sensationalism, but critical thinking is essential when exploring these topics. So let's talk about possession itself. What exactly does it mean to be possessed by a demon, and how is it different from other forms of demonic influence?
That's an important distinction. The source outlines 3 levels of demonic influence: obsession, oppression, and possession. Obsession is the mildest form, where a person might experience intrusive thoughts or temptations. Oppression is a bit more severe, involving physical or psychological harassment.
And possession is the full-blown takeover, right? Where the demon has complete control over the person's actions and even their thoughts.
Yes, that's the most extreme form, and the encyclopedia doesn't hold back on the details, describing vivid symptoms like contortions, speaking in unknown languages, and even superhuman strength.
It's hard to imagine something more terrifying than losing control of your own body and mind. These descriptions really blur the line between what we might consider demonic influence and what could be attributed to psychological or even neurological conditions. Has that line always been so clear-cut?
Not at all. In fact, modern interpretations of possession sometimes acknowledge psychological and sociological factors. Recognizing that not every case can be attributed solely to demonic forces, it's a reminder that the human mind is complex and that there might be multiple explanations for these kinds of phenomena.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a call for a nuanced perspective,
Yeah.
recognizing that there might be more to the story than meets the eye.
Yeah.
Speaking of stories, the Encyclopedia mentions some famous cases of alleged demonic activity, like the Amityville Horror. What can you tell me about that one?
Ah, yes. The Amityville Horror. That case involved Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famous paranormal investigators, who were called in to investigate claims of a haunting in a house where a family had been tragically murdered. The source describes all sorts of unsettling occurrences, including green slime oozing from the walls and demonic apparitions.
That's the stuff of nightmares. But did they ever find any concrete evidence to support the claims of demonic activity, or was it all based on personal experiences and eyewitness accounts?
That's the challenge with these types of cases, isn't it? It often comes down to personal testimony, which can be subjective and difficult to verify. But the lack of concrete evidence hasn't stopped the Amityville Horror from becoming one of the most well-known and debated paranormal cases in history.
I guess some stories just capture our imagination. Yeah. Even if we're not entirely sure what to believe. Are there any other cases that stood out to you from the Encyclopedia?
There's the case of the Loudun possessions, a particularly tragic and disturbing example. It involved a group of nuns who claimed to be possessed by demons and accused a local priest, Father Grandier, of summoning those demons to torment them.
Accusing a priest of summoning demons. That sounds like a recipe for disaster. Especially during a time when religious beliefs were so deeply intertwined with everyday life. What happened to Father Grandier?
Sadly, he was convicted of witchcraft and burned at the stake. It's a chilling reminder of how accusations of demonic influence could have deadly consequences, especially during times of religious fervor and political intrigue.
It's a stark reminder of the importance of critical thinking and due process, even when dealing with matters of faith and the supernatural. These stories highlight the danger of conflating belief with evidence, a lesson that's still relevant today.
You're absolutely right. It's a lesson we should all take to heart. And speaking of historical examples, we can't forget the Salem witchcraft hysteria, a classic example of how mass fear and paranoia can lead to horrific injustices.
The Salem trials are a dark chapter in American history. It's unsettling how easily accusations of witchcraft and demonic influence could take hold, leading to the condemnation of innocent people based on nothing more than spectral evidence, the visions of those claiming to see spirits or demons.
Exactly. The Salem trials stand as a stark warning about the dangers of mob mentality, the power of suggestion, and the devastating consequences of unchecked accusations. It's a reminder that we must always be vigilant in protecting the rights of the accused and demanding evidence before passing judgment.
These historical cases are fascinating and disturbing in equal measure. They make you think about the fine line between belief and delusion, and how easily that line can be blurred, especially when fear and societal pressures come into play. But let's shift gears for a moment and explore another facet of demonology, one that's often shrouded in mystery and misconception: the Black Mass and Satanism.
That's a topic that often evokes strong reactions, and it's important to approach it with nuance and understanding. The Encyclopedia defines the Black Mass as a blasphemous ritual intended to mock and invert Christian practices. It's often associated with Satanism, but it's crucial to remember that there's a wide spectrum of beliefs and practices within Satanism itself.
So it's not as simple as saying that all Satanists are devil worshippers or engage in these dark ritualistic practices.
Not at all. Some groups, like Anton LaVey's Church of Satan, for instance, focus more on individual empowerment and rejecting traditional morality. They might use satanic imagery and symbolism, but their focus is often on self-reliance and challenging societal norms.
That's interesting. So there's a philosophical side to Satanism that goes beyond the stereotypical image of devil worship and evil rituals.
Exactly. And then there are other groups that do engage in more extreme, and sometimes even criminal activities, but those are often fringe elements and don't represent the entirety of the satanic spectrum. It's important to remember that generalizations are dangerous, and understanding any belief system requires looking beyond the surface and engaging with its complexities.
That's a valuable reminder. It's about understanding the nuances and avoiding sweeping judgments. Speaking of challenging traditional views, how does modern witchcraft fit into all of this? It seems like there's been a significant shift in how witchcraft is perceived and practiced today.
Absolutely. The Encyclopedia points out how witchcraft has been reclaimed as a religion in its own right. separate from its historical associations with demonic forces. Figures like Gerald Gardner and Margaret Murray played pivotal roles in this transformation, helping to reframe witchcraft as a nature-based spiritual practice focused on personal empowerment.
So we're not talking about witches flying around on broomsticks and casting evil spells.
Not quite. Modern witchcraft, as described in the source, emphasizes a connection with nature, the cycles of the seasons, and the harnessing of personal energy. It's more about inner transformation and spiritual growth than conjuring demons or causing harm.
That's a far cry from the stereotypical image of the witch as an evil figure in league with the devil. It's like a complete reversal of the narrative that dominated for so long.
Precisely. And even popular culture has begun to reflect this shift, portraying witches in a more nuanced and sometimes even positive light. Take the movie The Witches of Eastwick, for example. Those witches were powerful women who embraced their individuality and sexuality, but they weren't inherently evil.
I love that movie. It's a great example of how our perceptions of witchcraft are changing, becoming more complex and multifaceted. It's a testament to the power of reclaiming narratives and challenging outdated stereotypes. It's amazing how much our perceptions of these things have changed over time. Makes you wonder what other beliefs we hold today might be reinterpreted in the future.
Yeah, that's a fascinating thought. Perhaps future generations will look back at our current understanding of the world and find it just as curious and intriguing as we find these ancient beliefs.
It really makes you realize that knowledge is constantly evolving,
Yeah,
and what we consider absolute truth today might be viewed quite differently tomorrow.
precisely. And that's what makes exploring these topics so rewarding. It's not just about learning facts, but about challenging our assumptions and expanding our understanding of the human experience.
This deep dive has been quite the journey. I feel like I've learned so much, but also have so many more questions now. It's like opening one door, only to discover a whole hallway of other doors waiting to be explored.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? The more we learn, the more we realize how much more there is to discover. It's a lifelong process of exploration and discovery.
So, for someone like me who's just beginning to delve into the world of demonology,
Mm.
what's the key takeaway? What's the one thing I should keep in mind as I continue my own exploration?
I think the most important thing is to remember that demonology, like any field of study, is full of diverse interpretations and evolving perspectives. The sources you provided offer a glimpse into this complex world, where ancient beliefs intersect with modern interpretations.
It's like piecing together a giant, multifaceted
Yeah.
puzzle
Yeah.
with pieces from different cultures,
Yeah.
different time periods, different belief systems.
And the beauty of it is that you get to decide how those pieces fit together for you. The Encyclopedia provides a framework, but ultimately, your understanding of demonology will be shaped by your own critical thinking, your own experiences, and your own willingness to engage with the material.
It's not about blindly accepting everything you read, but about using it as a springboard for your own personal exploration and interpretation.
Exactly, and that's what makes this deep dive so valuable. It's not just about accumulating knowledge, it's about encouraging you to question, to analyze, to form your own conclusions.
Well said. And to our listener, as you continue your own deep dive into the world of demons and demonology, consider this. How do these historical narratives and descriptions of demonic entities inform our understanding of the nature of good and evil and the human capacity for both darkness and light?
It's a question that has resonated throughout human history, and one that each of us must grapple with in our own way. As we've seen, the answers aren't always clear-cut, but the journey of exploration is both fascinating and ultimately enriching.
It's been a pleasure diving into this topic with you. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those deep dives going.